what did you learn about money while growing up? In this episode of Make Money and Property, we're going to be talking about those things that may be holding you back with a relationship and thoughts around money. It's all about how can we increase our wealth thermostat so we can attract more money, and once we get that more money, how can we put that to work to then multiply in order to create more wealth? Hello, Paul McFadden here. So here's some things that I heard while growing up, and chances are you probably heard them as well. It takes money to make money. Money doesn't grow on trees. You know, money's the root of all evil. If you think about it, a lot of these things that we learned while growing up kind of is how we start creating our money habits. So growing up in a single parent household with my mum and two younger sisters, money was a real subject that we all avoided talking about because we never had any. Like things that my mum would say was like, do you think I'm made of money? You know, and some others around me, when I was thinking about doing whatever it was, they would keep on saying things like, no, that's not for people like us. It takes money to make money. You weren't born with a silver spoon in your mouth. Hey, you must have ripped someone off. That person must have ripped someone off to get where they are now. It's crazy that our money beliefs at a young age come from our parents. And my mum, she was just doing what she learned about money as well. It wasn't like she was doing anything wrong. She was just going through patterns and repeating those patterns that she learned from her parents and her peers as well. And this is why it's crazy that this is not taught in school. Like, financial education is incredibly important. That much so that when I made my first million through property, by the age of 26, I lost the most of that money by the age of 27. How can you go from making £1 million and then squandering so much of that all inside of a year? Well, it's the exact same when you look at any person who wins a big windfall in the lottery. Someone who wins a 7-figure plus payout and they've not got the right money habits, they tend to squander that money. I mean, let's imagine you win £1 million on the lottery, right? Not that you would play the lottery for someone watching this, but however, let's say you've won £1 million. Well, chances are if you've got not the greatest money habits and you haven't learned about financial education, chances are what you're going to go and do is buy a bigger home. And you'll likely pay that off and buy it cash, okay? Then you've got a whole bunch of debts that you probably want to go and clear off as well, so you go and clear a bunch of debts. You also want to go and buy a nicer and better car. So before you know it, you've spent about half of it already. And of course you want to go on some nice holidays and you'll give some money to friends and family, and everyone will know that you've just won the lottery as well because you're changing your lifestyle, and they'll be going wanting things from you too. So once you burn through a lot of that money, then you're starting to think, well, I'm no longer working where I'm working just now because I quit my job because I'm now a lottery millionaire. You'll start burning through that money very quickly till you get to a point you're like, oh my God, I've got none of this money left over. Because this is the crazy thing. You know, this is how so many people squander money, and how when I came into money, I did the exact same thing. I knew how to make money through property, which was one thing, but I never learned how to keep it. So our money habits are incredibly important. And I'm going to tell you a kind of story which I heard that changed a lot of things for me in my thought process around money. It's a story where it was an experiment that was taking place in the States. So in the US, they did this experiment, and it was for a job interview, and where they invited 50 people to apply for a job. Now, all 50 people who were applying for this job, they were all super qualified. They had the right qualifications, they had all the experience. I mean, they could do this role that they were applying for with their eyes closed. So they went for the first interview, and it was for a $50,000 a year position. So they went for that interview, and once they came out of the interview, they would ask for some feedback. They would ask them, well, how do you think the interview went? Did you think it went well? And the feedback was, yes, I knocked it out of the park. It was a great interview. This role is perfect for me. I'm going to do great at it. So everyone was upbeat and positive and believed they were going to have a high chance of getting the role. They were then invited back a week later, and when they came back, they were to go in for a second interview. And right before they walked through the door to go in and meet the interviewer for the second interview, the person who was taking them through says, hey, look, we've made one tiny little mistake. You're not applying for a $50,000 a year position. We missed a zero. It's just a little zero. We've missed a zero. You're applying for a $500,000 a year position. And then they opened the door, let them go in for their second interview. Now, when they came back out, they asked the same question. They asked them, how did you go on an interview? How did you feel it went? And most of them, their feedback was an awful interview. It bombed. Yeah, there was too much pressure. I get stressed out. I asked too many questions. So in summary, when we were talking to them, the feedback that they got is that most people went in there and started to self-sabotage because they believed up until that moment that they were a $50,000 a year person, not a $500,000 a year person. And this is what's crazy, is that when the whole schooling system, from when we go to school, we're taught to do what? Get good grades, get a good job. If you can go to, before you get the job, go to college and university and study, get a degree, and then go and get a job and then work up that corporate ladder. So then what happens, because of the way the system's set up and people don't have the money habits, what ends up happening is we then determine our value based on what we get paid for a living or what our job pays us. Even if you own your own business, what's crazy about that is you'll have in your own mindset your limitations in terms of your ability of what you can actually earn. So a little side story just there last week is that I was looking to get my cars validated. I was going to be in the office through in Glasgow, and I put a little message out on my Insta stories to ask if there was any car valeters that could come along and help and valet the cars. So one day I'd bring one car through, the next day I'd bring the other. So while I was doing that, I must have had over 30 people, different car valeters, who messaged me. The crazy thing was like half of them says they would valet both cars for free. Sounds like a good deal, sure. But then there was others who were sending me their prices, and then one person in particular, their prices to valet the Bentley was going to be £145. To valet the Urus, it was going to be £150. Now, that price was significantly more than anyone else by about 3 times. So I chose them to do it. And the reason I chose them, you might be thinking, why on earth are you paying the most for a valeter when if you look at them all, they probably could have done just as good a job? Well, I paid it because that's someone who knew their value. And that there is very rare. People find it difficult to know their value. And that's what happens when you've got the wrong money habits. And your wrong money habits don't necessarily mean that they're wrong, because it's just what you learned. And we need to relearn and what we process and what we think about money, but more importantly, knowing your value. Now, the funny thing is, going back to the job interview, for those that were doing or were a $50,000 a year position, those people there, if they were then told, oh, we made a mistake, it's a $55,000 year position or £60,000 a year or dollars a year position, chances are they would have still did a good second interview. That was a comfort zone stretcher for them, more money than they thought they were going to be earning. And that's the crazy thing when most people look for a job, or if you're in business, if you're looking to bring on new clients and customers. You know, this is the crazy thing, is like when you know your value, then you're always going to have people that will pay for it. And knows that when it comes to a salary and so forth, it's about how can I become a person that feels comfortable about earning more. So when you start to put all this into practice, first we need to get up here right and change our money beliefs and believe that you're worth more. Believe that the things that were kind of said to us by our parents, and maybe ask yourself what's the things that you heard, think about those and start to reframe them so they no longer hold us back. And a couple of things that you can do, and what I did at a young age, I started reading biographies of super successful people, people who had made lots of money. Because I thought, well, people who are making money, if I read their biography, which is a story of their life, what's going to happen is I'm going to learn about their money habits. I'm going to learn about their journey and what it took them to be successful and how they started to know their value and what they should believe that they should get paid for. And when you start to read their stories, you start to realize that they're just like us. They started with humble beginnings. Some of them, a bit like myself, started with nothing. And poverty, you could say, struggled with an upbringing not having and all those money blocks. Yet they kept on learning more about money and how to have a different relationship with it so they could make more money, keep it, and multiply it to ultimately create more wealth. And for myself personally, when I made that money in my mid-20s and started to lose it, I had to go back to relearn all about money. So what I'd recommend you to do just now is a couple of things. One is, first and foremost, what did you learn about money while growing up? Write that down, because you're going to find that some of those might still be patterns that are operating and running in your mind just now. We need to cut those off so we can rethink about money in a more upbeat and positive way. Have a better relationship with money first and foremost. And secondly, you've got to know your value. And once you know your value, and I'm here to tell you that whatever you're getting paid right now, whatever that is, and your salary, your income, or your business, you are worth way more. And sometimes that means you need to bring more to the marketplace in order for that to happen. But first you need to believe in yourself. And if you do that, that's the first step to get a lot more in your life. So to summarize here, let's think about our money habits. Let's think about, are your current money habits serving you, or are they holding you back and keeping you where you are right now? If so, let's have a little think about that, because once you become consciously aware, you can do something about it to think about what you do want in order to create the life that you want.